The radar screen flickered with impossible data. Three separate defense systems had tracked the same signature plummeting earthward at terminal velocity. A Su-25 Frogfoot, call sign Valkyrie 7, diving straight through a wall of surface-to-air missiles at an angle that should have torn the aircraft apart. Flight computers calculated structural failure at 8,000 feet. The plane hit 6,000 and kept diving. At 4,000 feet, ground control lost the signal entirely, swallowed by electronic interference and the chaos of battle. "Confirm aircraft status," crackled through the communications center, voices tight with disbelief. "Valkyrie 7, report position." Static, then silence. Commander Viktor Petrov stood before the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the amber glow of tracking monitors. 23 years of air command had taught him to read between the lines of battlefield data, to distinguish between pilot error and the impossible. What he saw defied both categories. The Su-25 dive profile resembled a controlled descent into hell, too steep for survival, too precise for panic. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kozlov, his voice carrying the uncertainty of a man questioning his own instruments. "Satellite thermal imaging shows no impact crater, no debris field, no emergency beacon." Petrov's jaw tightened. In the distance, smoke columns rose from enemy positions like funeral pyres, marking successful strikes against fortified bunkers that had withstood 3 previous assault waves. Someone had completed the mission, but according to every law of physics and 23 years of military aviation, that someone should be dead. "Run the footage again," Petrov ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command and growing suspicion. "From the beginning. I want to see exactly what happened to Valkyrie 7. The main screen flickered to life, displaying gun camera footage from the support flight. There, a gray shadow against storm clouds, the Su-25 beginning its impossible dive. The pilot's voice came through archived radio transmissions, steady and professional. "Valkyrie 7 beginning attack run. Target acquired." But Petrov knew something his subordinates didn't. He recognized that voice. More importantly, he recognized the tactical signature, the way the aircraft moved through contested airspace like it belonged there, owned it, commanded it with an authority that transcended rank or protocol. Only one pilot in his command flew with that particular brand of controlled aggression, that surgical precision wrapped in seeming recklessness. The problem was, according to his flight roster, that pilot wasn't supposed to be in the air today. Captain Yelena Marchenko had been grounded pending investigation, a bureaucratic punishment for her inability to follow proper chain of command protocols. Her Su-25 should have been sitting in Hangar 7, engines cold, weapons systems locked down. Yet someone calling themselves Valkyrie 7 had just executed the most audacious ground attack mission in recent memory, emerging from what should have been certain death to deliver devastating precision strikes against hardened enemy positions. Petrov reached for his secure telephone, his mind already calculating the implications. If Marchenko had taken an unauthorized aircraft into combat, the consequences would extend far beyond military discipline. But if she had succeeded where 3 previous missions had failed, those same consequences might be worth reconsidering. The phone rang twice before connecting to the base flight line. Morning mist clung to the tarmac as ground crews conducted their routine post-flight inspections, moving between aircraft with practiced efficiency. Hangar 7 stood at the far end of the flight line, its massive doors sealed against the elements and prying eyes. Inside, according to official records, Captain Yelena Marchenko's Su-25 waited in administrative limbo, grounded, inspected, and secured. Senior Airman Dmitry Volkov approached the hangar with his inspection checklist, keys jingling against his belt. As the senior maintenance technician, he performed this routine hundreds of times, checking fuel levels, examining control surfaces, verifying that grounded aircraft remained exactly where regulations demanded they stay. Today felt different, though he couldn't articulate why. The heavy doors groaned open, revealing the cavernous interior bathed in pale fluorescent light. Volkov stopped short, his clipboard clattering to the concrete floor. The parking space where Marchenko's Su-25 should have been sitting showed only oil stains and tie-down chains, empty anchor points that should have secured 10 tons of Soviet-era attack aircraft. The plane was gone. More troubling still, the hangar showed signs of recent mechanical activity: hydraulic fluid puddles, scattered tools, the lingering smell of jet fuel and hot metal. "Impossible," Volkov whispered, pulling out his radio with shaking hands. "Control, this is Maintenance 7. We have a situation in Hangar 7. The grounded Su-25 is missing." "Repeat that, Maintenance 7, came the reply, tinged with confusion. "Captain Marchenko's aircraft. It's not here. Hangar 7 is empty." Silence stretched across the radio frequency, filled only by static and the distant sound of jets taking off from the active runway. When the response finally came, it carried the weight of dawning realization. "Maintenance 7, report to command immediately. Do not discuss this with anyone else. Confirm receipt." Volkov's throat felt dry as desert sand. "Maintenance 7 confirms. En route to command." As he walked across the tarmac toward the command building, pieces of an impossible puzzle began falling into place. The unauthorized takeoff that had triggered air defense alerts 6 hours ago. The mystery aircraft that had somehow penetrated enemy defenses without clearance or support. The successful strike mission against targets that had withstood conventional assault. Someone had stolen a $10 million attack aircraft from a secured military hangar, flown it into combat without authorization, and somehow survived an engagement that should have ended in flaming wreckage scattered across hostile territory. The audacity of it defied comprehension. But Volkov had worked on Marchenko's aircraft for 2 years. He knew her pre-flight ritual, recognized her modifications to the ejection seat harness, could identify her piloting style from the wear patterns on control surfaces. More importantly, he understood why she might risk court-martial and imprisonment to complete a mission that military bureaucracy had declared impossible. The command building loomed ahead, its windows glowing with activity as officers and analysts worked to unravel the morning's events. Inside those walls, careers would be destroyed and reputations shattered. Outside, in the real world where bullets flew and good soldiers died waiting for support, impossible missions would continue to demand impossible solutions. Volkov climbed the steps to command, knowing that everything was about to change. The communications center buzzed with controlled chaos as radio operators worked multiple frequencies simultaneously, trying to piece together the morning's combat reports. Captain Alexei Romanov sat at the primary console, headphones pressed against his ears, filtering through static and battlefield noise for any sign of Valkyrie 7. "Ghost Flight, this is command," Romanov transmitted. "Report status of Valkyrie 7. Last known position Grid 77 Alpha." "Command, Ghost Flight Leader," came the crackling response. "Valkyrie 7 broke formation during initial approach, lost visual contact in cloud cover, assumed shot down after SAM engagement." Romanov's fingers danced across his keyboard, logging the transmission while his mind processed the implications. Ghost Flight had been the support element for the morning strike mission, 4 Su-25, tasked with suppressing enemy air defenses, while the primary attack aircraft delivered precision ordnance against hardened bunkers. "Ghost Leader, did you observe any parachutes, emergency beacons, debris?" "Negative, command. Heavy smoke, multiple explosions. Visibility near zero after missile impacts." But Ghost Leader's report didn't match the objective evidence. Satellite imagery clearly showed successful strikes against all primary targets. Someone had completed the mission, delivering devastating attacks with surgical precision against defensive positions that had previously seemed impregnable. The question remained: who? "Ghost Leader, confirm. All assigned targets were engaged and destroyed. A pause, then, affirmative command, all targets neutralized, textbook strikes. Whoever made those runs knew exactly what they were doing. Romanov felt a chill run down his spine. Professional pilots didn't speak casually about textbook strikes against heavily defended positions. They reserved that language for exceptional displays of skill, the kind of flying that separated competent aviators from legends. "Command, Ghost 2, interrupted another voice. "Request clarification on mission parameters. Ghost Leader ordered us to maintain overwatch position while unknown aircraft engaged primary targets. Is that standard protocol?" "Ghost 2, explain unknown aircraft." Single Su-25 approached from the south. "Call sign Valkyrie 7 but not on our flight roster. Pilot requested clear airspace for attack run." Voice authorization sounded legitimate. Romanov's blood turned to ice water. Voice authorization. That meant someone had impersonated proper command authority, convincing experienced pilots to alter their mission profile to accommodate an unauthorized aircraft. The level of confidence required for such deception suggested intimate knowledge of radio protocols and command structure. Ghost 2, describe the attack profile used by unknown aircraft. "Steep diving approach, nearly vertical. Looked suicidal from our position. Aircraft disappeared into SAM envelope, then multiple secondary explosions from target area. Never saw emergence or egress route." The pieces were starting to form a pattern that made Romanov's head spin. An unauthorized aircraft using legitimate call signs and radio procedures. A diving attack profile that defied standard tactical doctrine. Successful target engagement followed by mysterious disappearance. Someone with exceptional flying skills and intimate knowledge of military protocols had essentially hijacked a combat mission, completed objectives that had stymied previous attempts, then vanished without trace. "All units, this is command," Romanov transmitted on guard frequency. "Any aircraft observing Valkyrie 7 post-engagement, report immediately. Priority Alpha traffic." His console remained silent except for the steady hiss of radio static. Somewhere in the expanding search grid, a rogue pilot and $10 million worth of attack aircraft had simply evaporated, leaving behind only successful mission objectives and impossible questions. Romanov reached for the red telephone that connected directly to Commander Petrov's office. This conversation would determine whether they were dealing with a hero or a criminal, and whether the distinction even mattered anymore. In the pilot's ready room, conversations had taken on the hushed tones reserved for discussing the supernatural. Word traveled fast in military aviation communities, and news of the morning's impossible mission had already begun spawning theories that ranged from plausible to absurd. "I heard it was Marchenko," whispered Lieutenant Pavel Sokolov, glancing around to ensure his words wouldn't carry beyond the small group gathered around the coffee station. "Someone saw her near the flight line before dawn." Captain Boris Kuznetsov shook his head dismissively. "Marchenko's grounded, has been for 2 weeks. Her birds locked down in Hangar 7. "Then explain the attack profile," countered Lieutenant Anya Volkov, Dmitri's younger sister and one of the few female pilots on base. "Vertical diving approach through concentrated SAM coverage. That's pure Marchenko. Nobody else flies like that." The other pilots exchanged glances. They all knew Marchenko's reputation, her uncanny ability to thread impossible approaches through defensive fire, her tendency to treat surface-to-air missiles like minor obstacles rather than death sentences. More importantly, they knew her history. "You weren't here for Kandahar," said Major Ivan Petrov, the commander's nephew and senior pilot in the squadron. "Marchenko pulled similar stunts during the withdrawal. Unauthorized flights, impossible rescues, making command look foolish while saving lives." Sokolov leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. "What happened in Kandahar?" Petrov hesitated, clearly debating whether to breach unwritten protocols about discussing classified operations. Finally, he spoke, his words carrying the weight of personal witness. Evacuation convoy got pinned down by insurgent positions in the mountain passes. 3 helicopters shot down trying to provide support. Command declared the situation hopeless, ordered tactical withdrawal. Marchenko took her Su-25 up without authorization, flew solo into a kill zone that had already claimed multiple aircraft. The room had gone completely silent now, even the background chatter from other corners fading away as pilots strained to hear the story. Single aircraft, no support, facing concentrated anti-aircraft fire from elevated positions. Textbook definition of suicide mission, but Marchenko didn't see it that way. She saw 30 wounded soldiers who needed extraction and a bunch of bureaucrats more worried about paperwork than body bags. Petrov paused, his eyes distant as memories played across his features. She made 7 separate attack runs over 4 hours, systematically eliminating every defensive position that threatened the convoy route. Flew so low that rotor wash from the rescue helicopters actually buffeted her aircraft during the final extraction. Saved 30 lives that day, including 2 pilots from the downed choppers. "And command's response?" asked Volkov, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Formal reprimand for violating direct orders, loss of privileges, mandatory psychological evaluation to determine fitness for duty, the kind of bureaucratic punishment that teaches other pilots not to stick their necks out for the right reasons. The coffee in Sokolov's cup had gone cold, forgotten as he processed the implications. "So when you say she's grounded pending investigation, I mean she's being punished for caring more about mission success than career advancement," Petrov said bitterly. Again. Around the room, pilots nodded with understanding born of shared experience. They'd all faced moments when regulations conflicted with reality, when doing the right thing meant risking everything they'd worked to achieve. Most chose safety. Marchenko chose differently. The door to the ready room opened, admitting Sergeant Major Kozlov with a clipboard and grim expression. "All pilots report to command briefing room immediately. No exceptions." As they filed out, Volkov caught Petrov's arm. "If it really was Marchenko this morning," she whispered, "what happens to her now?" Petrov's smile held no humor. "Depends on whether command values results more than regulations. Based on past experience, I wouldn't bet on results." The briefing room filled with pilots, maintenance crews, and communications personnel, all summoned to address the morning's extraordinary events. At the front of the room, Commander Petrov stood before a large tactical display, his expression unreadable as he waited for the assembly to settle into silence. "At approximately 0630 hours this morning," he began, his voice carrying the formal tone reserved for official proceedings, "an unauthorized aircraft calling itself Valkyrie 7 penetrated hostile airspace and engaged hardened enemy positions. The mission resulted in complete destruction of all assigned targets with 0 friendly casualties." Murmurs rippled through the assembled personnel. Success stories were rare enough to warrant celebration, but unauthorized success stories created complications that extended far beyond tactical considerations. The aircraft in question was identified as a Su-25 attack aircraft, serial number 4739, assigned to this base, and currently listed as grounded pending administrative review. More murmurs, louder now as the implications became clear. Someone had stolen a military aircraft, flown it into combat without authorization, and somehow survived an engagement that had claimed multiple previous attempts. "The pilot of this aircraft remains unidentified," Petrov continued, though his eyes briefly found Captain Marchenko and the assembled crowd. Radio communications during the engagement indicated professional competence and intimate familiarity with tactical procedures. Post-mission analysis suggests exceptional piloting skill and detailed knowledge of enemy defensive capabilities. Major Ivan Petrov raised his hand. "Sir, what's the current status of the aircraft? Has it been recovered?" Commander Petrov's pause stretched uncomfortably long. "The aircraft's current location remains unknown. No emergency beacons have been detected. No distress calls have been received. Satellite surveillance has failed to locate any evidence of crash sites or emergency landings within the operational area." The room fell completely silent. Military aircraft didn't simply vanish, especially not 10-ton attack planes with distinctive radar signatures and limited fuel capacity. Someone had managed to make a Su-25 disappear completely, leaving behind only successful mission objectives and impossible questions. "Sir," asked Captain Kuznetsov, "are we dealing with theft or unauthorized deployment?" "That distinction," Petrov replied carefully, "depends on factors still under investigation. What matters for this briefing is operational security and mission continuity. Effective immediately, all aircraft movements will be verified through dual authorization protocols. No exceptions." Lieutenant Sokolov shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Commander, if the morning mission was successful, why the additional security measures?" Petrov's expression hardened. "Because success achieved through unauthorized means creates precedents that undermine military discipline. Today's hero can become tomorrow's liability if proper procedures aren't maintained." In the back of the room, Captain Yelena Marchenko sat in perfect stillness, her face revealing nothing as her commanding officer essentially described her as a threat to military order. Around her, other pilots stole glances, their expressions mixing admiration with concern. They understood the impossible position she occupied, too valuable to discard, too dangerous to trust. "Questions?" Petrov asked, his tone suggesting that questions would not be welcomed. The room remained silent, though tension crackled like electricity between the assembled personnel. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented. A military commander forced to condemn successful operations because they threatened the very structure that made military success possible. "Dismissed," Petrov said finally. "All personnel return to normal duties. Department heads report to my office in 30 minutes." As the room emptied, Marchenko remained seated, apparently studying her hands with intense concentration. She understood that her window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Soon, investigators would reconstruct the morning's events with sufficient detail to remove any doubt about her involvement. When that happened, her military career would end in disgrace, regardless of mission success. But for now, for these precious few hours, she remained officially innocent, a grounded pilot with no connection to unauthorized combat operations. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Hangar 7, as investigative teams meticulously documented every detail of the missing aircraft's former location. Senior Airman Dmitry Volkov watched the proceedings with growing unease. Knowing that his mechanical expertise would soon be called upon to provide testimony that could destroy a pilot he respected more than any officer in the command structure. "Volkov," called Chief Warrant Officer Brezhnev, the base's senior investigator, "walk me through the security protocols for grounded aircraft." Volkov approached the empty tie-down points, his boots echoing in the cavernous hangar. Standard procedure requires dual-key access for any maintenance activity. One key held by the duty officer, second key maintained by senior maintenance personnel. "Who held those keys last night?" "Lieutenant Kozlov had the duty officer key. I maintained the maintenance key." Volkov's voice remained steady, though his palms felt slick with perspiration. Brezhnev made notes on his clipboard, his pen scratching loudly in the hangar's artificial quiet. "Any record of authorized access between 2000 hours yesterday and 0600 hours this morning?" "Negative," No scheduled maintenance, no inspections, no authorized personnel access. Yet the aircraft is missing. Brezhnev's tone carried the weight of logical conclusion. Someone accessed this hangar, removed 10 tons of attack aircraft, and flew it into combat. That requires extraordinary mechanical knowledge and exceptional piloting skill. Volkov nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. Starting a Su-25 from cold requires specific pre-flight procedures. Fuel pump priming, hydraulic system checks, weapons safety verification. Minimum 30 minutes for an experienced pilot working alone. How many personnel on this base possess that level of technical competence? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Volkov knew the answer, understood its implications, and recognized that his response would effectively end Captain Marchenko's military career. Sir, with respect, that's not my determination to make. Brezhnev's smile held no warmth. Airman Volkov, you've maintained Captain Marchenko's aircraft for over 2 years. You've observed her pre-flight procedures, her mechanical knowledge, her familiarity with aircraft systems. In your professional opinion, could she have accomplished this unauthorized deployment single-handedly? Volkov met the investigator's gaze steadily. In my professional opinion, sir, Captain Marchenko is the most competent pilot I've ever worked with. She understands her aircraft better than most maintenance personnel understand theirs. That's not what I asked. No, sir, but it's the only answer I'm qualified to give. Brezhnev's frustration was becoming visible. Airman, obstruction of a military investigation carries serious consequences. I need clear answers about technical capabilities and access protocols. Then you'll need to ask more specific questions, sir. I can describe mechanical procedures and maintenance requirements. I cannot speculate about unauthorized activities or individual capabilities beyond my direct observation. The hangar fell silent except for the distant sound of aircraft operations on the active runway. Brezhnev understood that he was dealing with a technician who refused to be maneuvered into providing convenient testimony. More problematically, he was encountering the kind of personal loyalty that made thorough investigations nearly impossible. Very well, Brezhnev said finally. Prepare a complete technical report on aircraft systems and security protocols. Include detailed analysis of mechanical requirements for unauthorized startup and deployment. I want that report on my desk by 1800 hours. Yes, sir. As the investigation team departed, Volkov remained in the empty hangar, surrounded by the ghost of an aircraft that had somehow transformed from military asset to political liability overnight. He understood that his technical report would serve as evidence in proceedings that would determine Marchenko's fate. The question was whether he could construct that report in a way that provided facts without facilitating persecution. Outside, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, promising the kind of weather that grounded conventional aircraft and tested the skills of exceptional pilots. The irony wasn't lost on him. Captain Yelena Marchenko stood in her small quarters, methodically cleaning her flight gear with the attention to detail that had become second nature during 15 years of military aviation. Each piece of equipment told a story. The flight suit with oil stains that marked countless pre-dawn launches, the helmet with radio modifications she'd performed herself, the survival vest that had accompanied her through 3 combat deployments. On her desk lay official correspondence from the Personnel Review Board, formal notice that her case would be heard within 72 hours. The charges were precise and damning: violation of direct orders, unauthorized use of military equipment, reckless endangerment of personnel and resources. Each accusation carried potential sentences that ranged from dismissal to imprisonment. What the charges didn't mention was the strategic value of the morning's mission, the intelligence assets that had been preserved by eliminating enemy defensive positions, or the ground forces who would advance safely through corridors she had cleared with surgical precision. Military bureaucracy had little patience for strategic considerations when disciplinary protocols demanded satisfaction. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, not looking up from her equipment inspection. Lieutenant Anya Volkov stepped inside, closing the door carefully behind her. "Captain, I wanted to speak with you before the review board convenes." Marchenko continued her methodical cleaning, though her attention shifted to her unexpected visitor. Volkov was young, ambitious, and smart enough to understand that association with controversial figures could damage promising careers. "Lieutenant, you should be careful about the company you keep. My reputation has become somewhat toxic recently." Volkov moved closer, her voice dropping to ensure privacy. "With respect, Captain, your reputation is the only thing keeping half this squadron motivated. After what happened this morning, every pilot on base is reconsidering what it means to serve effectively." "And what did happen this morning, Lieutenant?" Marchenko's tone remained neutral, offering no confirmation or denial. "Someone reminded us that mission success matters more than bureaucratic approval. Someone demonstrated that exceptional circumstances require exceptional responses." Volkov paused, choosing her words carefully. "Someone showed us what leadership looks like when regulations become obstacles to protecting lives." Marchenko finally looked up from her cleaning, studying the younger pilot's face. "Hypothetically speaking, if someone had taken unauthorized action to complete a critical mission, what would you see as the probable outcome?" "Court-martial, dismissal, possible imprisonment." Volkov's response was immediate and accurate, but also mission success, strategic objectives achieved, lives saved, intelligence assets preserved. "And which outcome do you think matters most to the Personnel Review Board?" Volkov's bitter laugh provided the answer. They both understood that military bureaucracy valued predictability over effectiveness, procedural compliance over strategic success. An unauthorized mission that achieved critical objectives created uncomfortable precedents that threatened institutional control. "Captain, there's something else you should know. The pilots are talking. About Kandahar, about unauthorized missions, about the difference between following orders and serving effectively. Your actions have inspired discussions that extend far beyond this morning's incident." Marchenko felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air seeping through her quarters' thin walls. "Lieutenant, be very careful about the conclusions you draw from speculation and rumors. Military careers have been destroyed by association with controversial figures." "Yes, ma'am, but some things are worth the risk." After Volkov departed, Marchenko returned to her equipment maintenance, though her hands moved automatically while her mind processed the implications of their conversation. She had always understood that unauthorized actions carried personal consequences. What she hadn't anticipated was the possibility that those actions might inspire others to question the balance between institutional loyalty and operational effectiveness. Her flight gear lay ready for missions that might never come, cleaned and prepared with the obsessive attention that separated professional aviators from casual pilots. Tomorrow, the Personnel Review Board would determine whether that preparation had been pointless. Tonight, she would prepare as if every flight might be her last. The Personnel Review Board convened at precisely 0800 hours in the base's formal hearing room, a sterile environment designed to emphasize the gravity of military justice proceedings. Captain Yelena Marchenko entered wearing her dress uniform, ribbons and decorations creating a colorful display that documented 15 years of exemplary service. At the head table sat three senior officers: Colonel Marina Petrova, the base's deputy commander and senior female officer; Lieutenant Colonel Boris Volkov, the chief of staff and Dmitri's uncle; and Major General Alexei Romanov, specially appointed to ensure impartiality in proceedings that had attracted attention from higher command levels. "Captain Marchenko," Colonel Petrova began, her voice carrying the formality required by military justice protocols. "You stand accused of violations of Article 86, failure to obey direct orders, Article 87, unauthorized absence from assigned duties, and Article 121, unauthorized use of military property. How do you respond to these charges?" Marchenko stood at attention, her gaze fixed on a point above the review board's heads. "I respectfully decline to enter a plea until I understand the specific accusations, ma'am." Lieutenant Colonel Volkov leaned forward, consulting his notes. "Captain, on the morning of August 5th, an aircraft assigned to your command was deployed in unauthorized combat operations. The aircraft's current location remains unknown. Do you have knowledge of these events?" "Sir, I have knowledge of successful combat operations conducted against strategic targets that had previously resisted multiple authorized assault attempts. I have knowledge that these operations resulted in complete mission success with zero friendly casualties. I have knowledge that critical intelligence assets were preserved through elimination of enemy defensive capabilities." The response was technically accurate while avoiding direct admission of involvement. Major General Romanov recognized the tactic, a professional military officer navigating the narrow space between honest testimony and self-incrimination. "Captain," he said, his voice carrying the authority of superior rank and extensive experience, "your evasive responses suggest awareness of unauthorized activities. This board requires direct answers to direct questions." Marchenko's posture remained perfect, though her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "General, with respect, this board requires accurate information about operational effectiveness and strategic consequences. I can provide detailed analysis of mission parameters, tactical execution, and strategic implications. I cannot provide speculation about unauthorized activities beyond my direct knowledge." Colonel Petrova consulted her files, searching for leverage that might compel more direct testimony. "Captain, maintenance records indicate that you possess detailed knowledge of the aircraft's mechanical systems. Communications analysis suggests familiarity with radio protocols and tactical procedures. Satellite imagery confirms exceptional piloting skill during the combat engagement. How do you explain these coincidences?" "Ma'am, maintenance knowledge, communications expertise, and piloting skill are standard qualifications for attack aircraft pilots. Any competent aviator would demonstrate similar capabilities. But not every pilot would risk court-martial to complete an unauthorized mission." The statement hung in the room like an accusation waiting for confirmation. Marchenko understood that the review board was seeking admission of guilt that would simplify their proceedings and justify predetermined conclusions. "Ma'am, I cannot speak to motivations for unauthorized activities. I can confirm that strategic objectives were achieved through exceptional tactical execution. Whether those achievements justify the methods employed is a determination that exceeds my authority." Lieutenant Colonel Volkov's frustration was becoming evident. "Captain, this board has reviewed your service record, including previous instances of unauthorized actions and disregard for proper procedures. The pattern suggests chronic inability to function within established command structure. Sir, my service record also documents successful missions, lives saved, and strategic objectives achieved under challenging circumstances. Whether those achievements constitute chronic inability depends on the criteria used for evaluation." The room fell silent as board members recognized they were dealing with an officer who refused to simplify their task through convenient admissions or expressions of remorse. Major General Romanov spoke quietly, his words carrying weight accumulated through decades of military leadership. "Captain Marchenko, this board understands that exceptional circumstances sometimes require exceptional responses. However, military effectiveness depends on institutional discipline and procedural compliance. How do you reconcile individual initiative with collective responsibility? For the first time since entering the room, Marchenko's composure showed signs of strain. The question struck at the fundamental tension that had defined her entire military career, the conflict between operational effectiveness and bureaucratic compliance. "General," she said finally, "I reconcile them by remembering that our primary responsibility is to the soldiers whose lives depend on mission success, not to the institutions whose authority depends on procedural compliance." The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable, filled with implications that extended far beyond individual disciplinary proceedings. The afternoon session of the Personnel Review Board focused on witness testimony, beginning with Senior Airman Dmitry Volkov's technical analysis of aircraft security and mechanical requirements. The young maintenance expert approached the witness table with obvious reluctance, understanding that his expertise would be used to construct chains of evidence against a pilot he respected. "Airman Volkov," Colonel Petrova began, "described the technical requirements for unauthorized deployment of a grounded Su-25 attack aircraft." Volkov consulted his prepared notes, though his knowledge needed no written support. "Ma'am, cold startup requires approximately 30 minutes for an experienced pilot working alone. Procedures include fuel pump priming, hydraulic pressure verification, weapons system checks, and flight control calibration." How many personnel on this base possess sufficient technical knowledge to accomplish these procedures without assistance? The question struck at the heart of the case against Marchenko. Volkov understood that his answer would effectively identify the universe of possible suspects, narrowing investigative focus to a handful of technically qualified pilots. "Ma'am, most attack pilots possess basic technical knowledge. However, solo startup under time pressure requires exceptional familiarity with aircraft systems and mechanical procedures." Lieutenant Colonel Volkov pressed for specificity. "In your professional opinion, how many pilots meet those qualifications?" "Sir, that determination exceeds my technical expertise. I can describe mechanical requirements, but assessment of individual capabilities involves factors beyond my observation." Major General Romanov leaned forward, his expression patient but determined. "Airman, you've worked closely with Captain Marchenko for over 2 years. Describe her technical competence compared to other pilots." Volkov felt the weight of competing loyalties: professional honesty versus personal loyalty, institutional responsibility versus individual conscience. His answer would either provide ammunition for prosecution or demonstrate the kind of evasive testimony that characterized military personnel protecting their own. "General, Captain Marchenko demonstrates exceptional understanding of aircraft systems. She performs personal inspections that exceed standard requirements, identifies mechanical issues before they become operational problems, and maintains her equipment with attention to detail that surpasses most pilots." Could she accomplish unauthorized startup procedures single-handedly? "Sir, any competent pilot could accomplish those procedures given sufficient time and technical knowledge." "That's not what I asked." Volkov met the general's gaze steadily. "Sir, that's the only answer I'm qualified to provide. Speculation about unauthorized activities extends beyond my technical expertise." The board members exchanged glances, recognizing that they were encountering the same pattern of protective testimony that had characterized previous witnesses. Military personnel were demonstrating remarkable consistency in providing factual information while avoiding conclusions that might damage Marchenko's case. Colonel Petrova attempted a different approach. "Airmen, maintenance logs indicate that Captain Marchenko frequently requested detailed technical briefings about aircraft modifications and system upgrades. Why would an operational pilot require such extensive mechanical knowledge?" "Ma'am, Exceptional pilots understand that mechanical reliability directly impacts mission effectiveness. Captain Marchenko's interest in technical details reflects professional competence, not inappropriate curiosity. But such knowledge would facilitate unauthorized activities. Ma'am, such knowledge facilitates operational effectiveness. Whether it could be misused for unauthorized purposes is not my determination to make. Lieutenant Colonel Volkov's exasperation was becoming visible. Airman, your evasive testimony suggests coordinated effort to obstruct this investigation. Such obstruction carries serious consequences for career advancement and professional standing. Volkov's response came without hesitation. Sir, my testimony reflects professional assessment of technical requirements and individual competence. If those assessments appear evasive, perhaps the questions seek conclusions that exceed factual evidence. The statement bordered on insubordination, though its technical accuracy made disciplinary response problematic. Major General Romanov recognized that the investigation was encountering institutional resistance that reflected broader questions about the balance between individual initiative and collective discipline. Airman Volkov, he said finally, your loyalty to Captain Marchenko is evident and professionally appropriate. However, this board requires complete and honest testimony about technical capabilities and security protocols. Yes, sir. I have provided complete and honest testimony about technical requirements and mechanical procedures. I cannot provide speculation about individual motivations or unauthorized activities beyond my direct observation. The board recessed to consider testimony that provided precise technical information while avoiding the convenient conclusions they sought. Outside the hearing room, institutional loyalty was proving stronger than bureaucratic pressure, creating complications that extended far beyond individual disciplinary proceedings. Evening found Captain Marchenko in the base's small chapel, a non-denominational space that provided refuge for military personnel seeking solitude and reflection. She knelt before the simple altar, not in prayer but in meditation, using the quiet environment to process the day's events and prepare for whatever consequences tomorrow might bring. The chapel's stained glass windows filtered dying sunlight into patterns of colored light that danced across wooden pews and stone floors. In this place, military rank and political considerations seemed distant, replaced by more fundamental questions about duty, conscience, and the price of principle. I thought I might find you here, said a familiar voice from the chapel's entrance. Marchenko turned to see Commander Viktor Petrov approaching, his dress uniform replaced by simple fatigues that suggested unofficial conversation rather than formal proceedings. She remained kneeling, though she turned to face her commanding officer. Commander, I didn't expect to see you before tomorrow's final session. Petrov took a seat in the pew behind her, close enough for private conversation but distant enough to maintain appropriate military courtesy. Yelena, we've served together for 8 years. In that time I've watched you accomplish impossible missions, safe.